Hello, children. Today we're going to talk about meekness. Do you know what meekness means? You see, meekness means even more than just being humble. Many people can be humble, but only few become meek. Many people think that being humble means to be weak, but that's not true. Humility takes a lot of strength and faith in God. In fact, the best leaders are those who have learned to be meek. Today, we'll see the difference between a proud Pharaoh and a meek Moses. But remember, Moses wasn't born meek. No. God had to teach him some important lessons to help him develop this important fruit of the Spirit. When Moses was in Egypt and killed the Egyptian taskmaster, he wasn't ready to lead God's people out. He was a proud prince who wanted to free them with his own abilities. Just like Abraham, Moses needed to learn faith. He shouldn't rely on human strength or wisdom for the fulfillment of his promises, but on the power of God. God called him on Mount Sinai to go to Egypt and to deliver the people of Israel from their bondage. Let's hear how Pharaoh reacted to Moses' request.
Hi kids, I'm the Pharaoh of Egypt. Everything you see in this country is mine. There's nothing in this country that I don't own, even the people and their animals. You see, I'm the greatest man on earth. But wait, why are you here? Did you just come with Moses and Aaron? Those two are the most entitled people I've ever met. How dare they talk to me like that, telling me that their Hebrew God is ordering me to let my slaves go. And don't even say anything about the river turning to blood, the frogs, the flies, and the hail. All these plagues happened in a natural way. God had nothing to do with any of it. I know I told Moses to pray to his God to remove each plague because that was the fastest way to get rid of them. But I will not let my slaves go away. I'd rather die than surrender to his God.
Pharaoh felt insulted when Moses asked him to let the Israelites go. He was a very proud man and believed that he was a god himself. But Pharaoh forgot that everything he owned in Egypt came from the God of heaven, through Joseph making Pharaoh the richest man and most powerful ruler on earth. But now, with these plagues, and because he didn't recognize God, God took away what he had given him in Egypt before. You know what, kids? When we are meek, we trust God to lead our lives. But when we're proud, we only do that what we want and refuse to listen to anyone else, including God. That's what Pharaoh did. And since he wouldn't let the Hebrews go, God had to send 10 terrible plagues to Egypt before Pharaoh finally listened. The last plague was the worst of all. Every firstborn child of Egypt died in one night, including Pharaoh's son. Death finally broke Pharaoh's pride, and he ordered Moses to take all the Hebrews and leave Egypt as soon as possible. Proverbs chapter 16 verse 18 says that pride goeth before destruction. Pharaoh's pride cost him the life of his child and brought the destruction of his own life, his entire army, and his country. Pharaoh died in the sea because he wouldn't submit to God's influencing power.
Hi there, kids. Well, I guess you're wondering how an Egyptian prince ended up as a simple shepherd who then led the Israelites to freedom. You know, after I killed the Egyptian, I had to flee to Midian. Being away from all the bad influence of Egypt made it easier for God to change me and help me unlearn some wrong things I had picked up in the palace. Imagine, God used sheep to take away all my pride and teach me patience. I can now die in peace, knowing that God's people nearly reached the promised land. Look at it. Isn't it beautiful? God has been with us all the way. We've seen God's deliverance so many times. I remember when we left Egypt. We walked about 6 days, day and night, until we reached the Egyptian border at the Red Sea. We had all the sea before us, the mountains around us, and the Egyptian army behind us. When the people saw Pharaoh's army coming after us, they were terrified and complained to me. Oh, but at that moment, God opened a way of escape through the sea. It was marvelous to see the manifestation of God's power. Yeah, the Israelites are a stubborn people, but I sure do love them. They've been disobedient so many times. But I'd rather die so they can live. I'd rather have my name taken out of the book of life than to see my people perish.
Numbers 12:3 tells us that Moses was meeker than anyone else on earth because he reflected God's character. Moses' life can be divided into 3 equal parts. He lived in Egypt for 40 years, worked as a shepherd for 40 years, and for 40 years he led Israel. Each stage of his life developed his character. Although Moses wasn't allowed to enter Canaan, God resurrected him shortly after his death and took him to heaven. In many ways, Moses was like Jesus. Both were saved from their enemies when they were young. Both left a throne and humbled themselves to save God's people. Moses gave the law to the people, was also a leader, judge, prophet, and mediator, just as Jesus is our leader, judge, lawgiver, and intercessor. They both fasted for 40 days and 40 nights, and they were both resurrected after death. And so we see that Jesus is the meekest person who ever lived. In fact, Jesus tells us to learn to be meek from him. We can only be meek if we obey God. You know why? Because meekness is a part of the character of God, and it's a gift God gives us when we are obedient. In Matthew 5:5, Jesus says, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." If we are meek, God will also be able to do great things through us. And when Christ comes, it will be the meek who go to heaven with him. God bless you. Goodbye.